All right, what's up, everyone? Just 2 hours session today, or 1 hour and a half. Sorry. So today I'll be breaking down two tracks. The Excision remix that's already came out on last week or something, 10 days ago, and the Viking Rhythm track I've been showing on Twitter and stuff. Let me play you the Viking track and then the remix while everybody comes in, and then I'll go and open the project and everything. How's the sound? Let me put it louder. So that's the first track I'm going to be explaining. I use FL Studio 20 for those who don't know, and Serum, Armor, and so if you have any question about that, feel free to ask them now. Okay, a tad louder. How about now? Okay, so that's the first track, and then the other track, let me find it, one sec. Excision, Samplifire remix. Okay, now that's the other track I'm going to be breaking down today. I see, one sec, let me... I see Volker Kyle comment saying, what's your approach at writing an interesting intro? I think it's finding a theme or inspirations that you really like and really feel like could add something to the dubstep, and just looping one element that you build on, right? So it could be 4 chords, it could be a vocal, it could be some drums, and you build on that, on that, on that. I'll show you in the project. So that's the other track. Answering Benjamin, probably like 50 tracks, 30 tracks, something like that. All right. So, without waiting too much, let's go and open up the first project here that we everyone should see. So yeah, let's play maybe from the build-up, a bit of the intro, and I'll show you guys maybe starting from the drop and then the intro if you want. So yeah, let's play it now. Okay, so on this track, I think, you know, I'm quite, you know, stoked about that one because I think the Viking inspirations helped a lot when it comes to the sound and how like nasty that goes compared to more standard sound design, you know. But the thing is, like, it's not really technical as opposed to previous tracks I did, you know, where I did like a lot of growls and serum and stuff like that. This one is pretty straightforward. The thing that made the track stand out to me was the intention I had. I think it's important to talk about that maybe before sound design. Talk about inspirations and intention when it comes to making a track. So, you know, sometimes it's great to just spend hours and hours making sound design and just like, you know, making sounds for the sound itself. But sometimes it's also great to take a step back and think more as a producer when it comes to making tracks, you know, like most producers in pop music, for instance, only use piano, guitar, and like, you know, vocal, and they got to do something inventive with that. And I think when it comes to dubstep, we can also use samples and older sound design, but use it in different ways. And I think here's the main example is the use of chants instead of basses. So if I start from here, you'll see. Oh, sorry, I need to activate the sidechain. So that's literally some guys like chants shouting. And that's how I started the drop. Instead of using like rhythm quarter notes, I use chants. And the other interesting decision, I think, was to use a Reese bass instead of a sub. So you might want to have headphones for that, but that's how it sounds. I'll talk about the Reese bass especially later on, but so the intention here was to make the sound really like not perfect, like imperfect, like the sound design itself not being too crazy, but the intention, as I said again, being really tribal, Viking influenced. And that's also why I used, instead of a sustained bass, I used some old harps here. So usually I would put like a screech here, you know, like, yeah, but that's not something I wanted to do here. So I used that one combined with the Reese bass and combined with the chants. And I think to me that was new, you know. So then you add up like actual dubstep sounds such as this one, which you can find in my Tugendgut sample pack. This one too. What else do we have? The drums, of course. Could talk about that too. Very sharp, tight drums. The one I used in my company collab as well. Very dry, very simple, but very effective and very loud too, you know. I think it's hitting around, let me see. Where's the mixer here? You know, it's hitting plus something, you know, plus 10 dB maybe, but it doesn't matter. What matters is the sound itself. If it sounds good, it's good, you know. That's the only thing you need to worry about. If it sounds good, it's good, okay? Don't worry about the visuals. Don't worry about compression. If you don't think you need to change the sound as it is, don't change it. You know what I mean? Like, don't even try. If somebody tells you, oh, you should put a compressor here and you should put some EQ here, and you know, blah, blah, blah. But if it's just for the technical aspect of it, don't even bother about that. You know what I mean? Like, don't even mix it down if it doesn't need to be mixed down. What matters is the music, you know? So yeah, the kick and snare, very loud, very simple, but also very short. I think it's important to note that, you know, it's only like maybe a sextuplet here, so like very, very short kick. Snare is very short as well, a bit longer, but that's not too much. It's a kick snare. Without the loudness here, like if I turn it down, you know, it's okay, but it's lacking that bit of clippings that helps the kick and snare get together. You know what I mean? Then what do we have? Yeah, the Reese bass. I also have this snare layer here giving me some resonance in D. So I pitched the snare in D here, you can see. With EQ. Nothing too crazy, you know, but it's a good layer. It's very subtle. So then you have the Reese bass, yeah. Some EQ on the Reese. some orchestral crash in order to make the mix sort of noisy. So you see, it's very simple when it comes to sound design. The only thing was to use the right instruments and the right timing, you know? So yeah, if you have any question on any specific sound, just let me know, because, you know, obviously maybe I missed something. But also what's interesting again for those who just came is the use of acoustic elements in the drop. I think that's something, you know, it's been done, but it could be done more, you know? Then we carry on with the new flow, I think, especially on the bass line. So we have this call, the new sort of call and response, the call being here, with layered with that one. And then the response is different as well, especially in the bass line. Instead of the Reese bass, we have this sort of Maroda type sound. And the sub here. So the choir is from a contact bank called Voice of the North. I got rid of it here, but I can show you if you want. Vocal growth, okay, I'll talk about that too. One sec. It's loading right now. How do you avoid clash between cymbals transient and drums transient? I don't avoid them. I actually put them together in order for them to sound good together, you know, from the starting points. So instead of avoiding clash, I would actually love to have them clash together, you know, if that makes sense. So I use my cymbals in order to work together with the kick snare and the snare, sorry, the kick and the snare, instead of, you know, sort of sidechaining the cymbals from the kick and snare or something. And now, yeah, I'll show you guys how I did the, you know, the main choir sound. Let me find it here. Dude, where is it? Voice of the North. Do you see it? Voice of the North? One sec. Maybe I'm tripping here. Bro, I don't see it. Voice of
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
Voice of War, Man of the North. Bro, where is it? Oh my god. Okay, I should have opened the contact before. Sorry, guys. Okay. There we go. Let's close that. Open again. Let's actually open. Delete. Open again. Do you tune all elements in your track to the bass note in the key, or use a lot of notes from the scale? No, I actually most of the time, sorry, try to tune to the bass. So in that case, D. So the synth would be D, the sub would be in D, the kick would sound good in D, you know, with the sidechain. And what I did on the main choir sound, like the shouts, is to use resonator in D. So it's still metallic sort of in D. It's not a lot, but it's a bit. Dude, I don't see. I'm sorry, guys. I don't see it. I don't get it though. Gravity. Well, I'm confused really. Should be here though. If I don't see it, if I don't find it in like 1 minute, I'm moving from that topic. Okay, Cinesample, Voice of the North, instruments. I think it was something like shouts or chants. Let's try shouts. How do you tune your kick? I use 808 as the starting point of my kick. So literally an 808. Why? Because I know the note of the 808, and two, because it's a static note. You know, the note stays the same. So it's like boom instead of doing doo. It's literally doing like doom. After that, I cut the 808 around, you know, the eighth note. So it's very short. It's like doom. And on top of that, I will actually layer acoustic kicks like and like hats like tsk. And together it makes for a very subby kick, but also very snappy at the same time. So you get best of both, you know. Okay, so that's what I used. Resample that, put some resonator on it in D, as I said, from kilohertz, and then you get that. You have to really be sharp about it, you know, so you have to cut it really sharp in order to have a groove. The thrill pack is a cluster pack. I could talk about that at the end if we have time. It's great for horror movies, cinematic and stuff like that. I love low-end kicks. That's a great way to do that. Yeah, I think it's helpful. Okay, moving on to the next section here. It's pretty similar, but it gets a bit more dubstep-ish, if that makes sense. Okay, so in the next section, the idea was to bring more like standard dubstep to it. So the call and response here is, you have this one being the call, like what I call call and response, like A, B. This one is A. So, and that's the response here, just a screech, you know. But the screech is a resampled screech from Massive, pitched down. So, that, you know, it sounds messy, but that's what I used it. And I layered the screech with some Viking horn. So you get that, the note from the horn, the grittiness from the screech, and then the Reese bass, which is even more messy. I'll show you how to do the screeches later on. It's usually FM from B with two saws. So the one being in you know, the root note D, D2 in FL, D1 in Ableton, and then the other one, oscillator B, being usually +3, +4 octave up. The important thing to do when you do screech like that is to keep the FM amount straight. Don't change the FM amount as you go. Keep it like static. Phase shouldn't change, FM amount shouldn't change, filters shouldn't change, because as soon as you change any of them, you change the phase point, and therefore the sub will not be in phase with the screech, and you want to be in phase with the screech and the sub at, you know, as much as possible, you know. So yeah, when I play everything together after that, yeah, and a bit of like rhythm sound here. Yeah. After that, what else? Yeah, I have this new section afterwards. Okay, so after that here, we still have the, you know, chants and stuff like that. And that too. Some like whispers and stuff. Maybe I have more, I don't know. I also have this one here. It's a D, it's a riser starting from D up to F, I think. So it's a short riser in terms of pitch. And I also, do I use that? No, I use that here. Yeah, you know, the art from the intro is also copy pasted. So it's in D again, and it gives me that Viking flow, you know, slow, gritty sort of sound. Yeah. So you don't modulate the FM, no. You know what? Let's answering to Edwin. I do have a sample pack coming out on Splice this month, and I also have a sample pack with Murda called Tug and Good Sample Pack. When it comes to the screeches, you know, let's try and do one quick here. For more like the beginners, it's important to know that it's very useful at the same time. So let me show you how to do screech and Reese bass. The first thing for the screech is to, as I said, make sure the phase and random starts and doesn't move afterwards. You know, it's every time you press a key, it's the same phase starting point, right? Then you want to be in the sub note, all right? So for my track, it's in D. And then you want to use FM in order to create like higher frequencies. Oops, FM from B, for instance. B being not played really, just for the FM, super high. And then you get like a good sort of middle ground, right? You don't have many options anyway. It's either lower, too much. So you got to stop somewhere around here. What you could do though to be a bit more interesting is to use another one again to do, you know, 2 layers of FM, FM from B and FM from sub then. You could even go lower here to create like, you know, a bit of vibratos. So it's kind of interesting to do. And then, so you have, you know, your sound pretty much. Now it's a matter of like filter, resonance, distortion, stuff like that. So you can distort like that. You can compress multiband, for instance. Boom, there you go. You know, and it's also important to have an attack, you know, at the beginning. So maybe it could be on the filters, could be on the FM too, just at the beginning, you know, just a little bit. Envelope mode. There you go. You know, and then you can play with that, reverb, resample, chorus, and stuff like that. When it comes to the screech, you know, it's also something that should be more used, in my opinion, in dubstep, because it's, you know, it's super easy to do, but also super helpful, you know, useful in a track. So the idea of a Reese bass is to have 2 wavetables at a slightly different pitch. So you can use 2 voices here in mono, and you get this messy sound, right? That's a drum and bass type sound. But, you know, that sort of sound is very useful because it has both high frequency, low frequency, mid-range frequencies at the same time. There is always a bit of pitch movement, so you can play with it. You know, you can have more pitch movement, less, a bit of stereo, no stereo. You can distort it, not distort it. And so, trust me, once you get to know that sound, you'll see it in many tracks. And you'll be like, okay, that's a Reese bass. I know how to do that. I should do that. You know, I should use that there, and so on. And, you know, you could, for example, do... You know, like, freaking comms, maybe. Make sure you use modo legato and like portamento. So yeah, that's literally the 2 sounds I used. The Reese bass and, you know, the screech. Where's the screech again? It's here. Would you want to use null pass filter on these reasons? Yeah, of course, yeah, you can do that. You can use filter, like as much filter as you want. Literally, the idea is detune, filter, compression, distortion, filter, compression, distortion, filter. You can, loop that, and, you can always do more filtering if you want, It's gonna get more interesting. Okay, so that's the outro afterwards. My sidechain is pretty simple. I group every basis or everything I want to sidechain really to this one channel in FL Studio. So in Ableton, you'll have to create a new audio track, automate the volume on that one track, and there you go. Automation is here. You can see it. It's following my kick movement, like my kick volume here, and yeah, you do it by ear. Most of the time. For example, if I make it longer, it's too much. If I do it shorter, I don't have groove, So you have to be, you don't have many options. At the end of the day, it's probably gonna end up being the same sidechain for that one track because that's just the best sweet spot. Yeah. When it comes to my basses, maybe I didn't talk about that, but what I do really is two steps. The first thing you want to do to do my process is to use one big group called all bass at the end of everything, where you compress in multiband. So it could be OTT, it could be Maximus for FL users, it could be the plugin called Multiband Dynamics for Ableton users, and then you would have some EQ. But that's about it, You don't want to change it too much. It's a big group, so don't do too much on that one group. And everything you see here in yellow is going to that group at some point. The other pre-group we have here is all synths, where I do send everything that's not a sub. So for instance, the Reese won't go in here, the sub won't go there. If I have a sub in a growl, I probably won't send that here because it's going to be high passed. That group is just a big high pass, Well, here it's not even high pass, but most of the time it's high pass. Sorry about that. But most of the time I do a high pass around 100. And before that is just, each and every instrument, So yeah, and then on each instrument it depends. Sometimes I want to have more distortion. Sometimes I want to have an EQ to get rid of the highs, the lows. But what you're looking for is balance at the end of the day. So you use these instruments, and once you selected the right 2, 3, 4 layers, you want to make sure some are in the center, some are spread, some have higher frequencies, some don't, some have lower frequencies, some don't. And yeah, it might sound super simple, but that's how I do it, And maybe the main reason why this project is simple, it's because I didn't need much more to make my idea work, if that makes sense. Sometimes you need more, sometimes you need more growls, you need more sound design because the idea might be lacking a bit, so you want to be more technical about it. But I do that too, it depends on the track, really. How do you go about filling out a drop as far as background elements? That's a good question, and that's something I think it's very important to do. What I do is, first of all, I try to come up with a great introduction theme. So let's play the intro here. And from that theme in the intro, I usually take 1 or 2 instruments, loop them in the background with distortion, pitch change, maybe reverb. So my theme is about to come up here. So knowing that this is my theme here, I know I can extract one part of that sound and put it in my drop because one, it's in D. It shows the idea of the track, you know, the Viking theme and stuff like that. And it goes well with the chants. So that's what I did, really. And here we go. It's the same sound. That here. Nah. And sometimes it might be so like ARP, sometimes it might be a detune pad. It depends on the track, really. How many layers will you do, or will this just sit on top of each other's? When it comes to background elements, I try to do 1 or 2 at the same time max. I don't do more than 2 though, because it usually doesn't need more than that. How do you master and mix your tracks? My master is almost non-existent. Clipping, imaging, making sure I don't have too much stereo or not enough. And EQing, mostly cutting the sides below 200 hertz. So for beginners here, a side is, what's in the side is what's not in mono. Okay, mid side is mono and not mono. Not to be confused with stereo. Stereo means mid plus side. Side is just something that's not in the center. And I do cut my side below 200 because you don't really need stereo below 200. It can be only mono. You save up some dBs here and there, so why not? And I have this special trick here. It's called Ozone 9 Low End Focus on my master. I do that since this year, I think. And it's hard to completely describe this plugin in one word, but it's taking the sub frequencies, analyzing the sub frequency if you want, when it comes to harmonic content, loudness, transient, everything. And it's applying a certain contrast to it. So if you increase the contrast, the kick is going to be super loud and the sub might be a bit more chill. But if you reduce the contrast, it's the opposite, the kick is like nice, but the sub is completely boosted. So you make sure to reduce the contrast. Let me play it for you in the drop, maybe. So that's contrast all the way up. That's way too much. Now contrast all the way down. So, it's interesting, especially for dubstep, because sometimes in dubstep we have, most of the time we don't have enough dynamics, meaning volume change in the sub frequency. It's always like one big line. So it's interesting sometimes to boost that kick a bit more, but do it before the clipper, right? Everything before the clipper except from the loudness meter at the end. Okay. But that's my master, and then my mix down. My mix down is for the bass. I think I talked about it just before, so you could go back and watch it. My kick and snare is slightly clipped, right? I don't have OTT, it's disabled right now, and I have a bit of EQing. The kick has nothing on it, the clap has nothing, so it's about the instrument you use, it's not about really what you do on them. Yeah, I'm sorry guys, it's really about the instrument you use at the beginning. So if you see yourself doing too much EQing or like too much process on one element, maybe it might be better to get rid of it and use a new kick or a new snare or a new sub, But where you really need that good compression, the only place is bass group. That's where you need a good compression. And for FL users, if I can give you this tip, is to use Clearmaster combined with OTT around that, 18%, 70% downward here. So without my bass group here, it sounds like that. Now with it. So my compression group here tames the chants, but also boosts the lower frequencies because it was a bit drowned before. What about my LUFS? Let's see here. So around -2 in the drop, which is loud. You don't need to go that much. You can just sit at -5 and it's perfectly fine, you know. Tune sounds so clean and clear. Thank you. Do you have any tip on how to help achieve such a nice sounding mix? Well, I just talked about it. How long have you been producing? It's around 10 years. Do you have any tips on making interesting themes for tracks? Yeah, that's a good question. The mindset, I think, helped me. So things that really helped me this year is not any sound design technique, any compression technique, any technical stuff. The things that really helped me is to take the time and listen. Literally, like, don't produce, okay? Just take the time, go on Spotify, listen to a track, and try to bring back some feelings in our producer mind, because as a producer, you're always analyzing, theorizing, compressing, EQing, and sometimes you lose some point, which is perfectly normal, and I think it happens to every one of us. But I got to a point where I couldn't even enjoy any track, okay? Because I was so focused on the technical aspect. Is it hitting that loud? Why is the kick so tamed? And I would lose the point. And so as a producer, it's really, really, really important to take the time, take a step back, enjoy some music that's not dubstep or dubstep, whatever. And from that enjoyment, from the fresh listener ear you have now, you can go back on FL or Ableton, whatever, and have fun again. So I know that sounds super simple. It's like, bro, what are you talking about? But that's true, you know? That's true. And the conclusion about that, what helped me here is that I was listening to Viking tracks, and especially the Viking soundtrack from the TV show. And I noticed, like, it's very tribal, it's very dark. It's almost like dubstep, right? And so I decided to make a track about that. And I found this instrument online called Tegelharpa cello. So if you want, you can just type that on Google. Tegelharpa cello, lower, deeper, darker Tegelharpa. I won't have time to go on YouTube, but just type that. Sampled it, put it back in 150 BPM. And I knew I had something, right? I knew, okay, it's a D note. It's good in 150. You know, I had to try. So I layered it first with a Reese bass. Again, very useful, as you can see. Some drums, but not dubstep drums, Viking drums. That one too. Had to bring some growls though. So that's my growls here. It's just to give me a bit of a dubstep intro, but you know, maybe I didn't even need that, you know? And then you play everything together. And once you have that loop, at least for me, I knew I had to make a drop that's not too technical, not too electronic, but something a bit more acoustic sounding, a bit less electronic in it. And so I decided to use a chant and, you know, then the Reese bass, and then everything came together. So what helped me at the beginning was to take the time to listen to something else, just not produce, really. Yeah, intro first on this one. You know what I mean? Like, not every time, but 50% of the time it's intro first and 50% it's drop first. So, but my better tracks, I think, are intro first. I think. Is master chain is yeah, E major, soft clipper, loudness meter, and yeah, isotope, low end focus. So yeah, maybe I should show you the Reese bass though. So that's a nasty Reese though. Okay, so let me get rid of the master. It's so much latency right now. Okay, so it's Harmor. So anybody knowing Harmor will know that the Reese comes from here. So that's my voices here. I have two voices with a lot of pitch detune, so it creates a Reese bass. And then I also have a phaser filter here, creating a lot of resonance where I put it. And as you can see, it goes up at the beginning and then down. So like that's what you see here. Like wow, almost like a talking Reese. That combined with the prism here. Prism that does... Prism, what does a prism? It's changing the frequencies of each harmonic. Depending on that that graph here somewhere. Yeah, that graph. So you can see it as an EQ, low frequency to top frequency, and X, so the Y-axis being the pitch change on each of these frequencies, okay? So if I change that, which I shouldn't, it's slightly changing the prism. You can see it here. You can actually see it, well, it goes higher here. And if I didn't have that, it would go up, sorry. So yeah, it's a pitch change per frequency. I think that's how you can say that. What else? Yeah, you know. And I have B2. B is kind of a special one. It's my way to do noise in Harmor. You have to click here on octave pitch. So the pitch is not in melodic, like it's not going to be logarithmic. So, you know, it's not going to be 50 hertz, 100 hertz, 150 hertz for each multiple, for each octave. It's going to be a different distribution. So it creates this noisy sound, super noisy. And it's a good way to have that as a backup on a Reese bass. So you have the Reese aspect and the noise all together, creating the nasty. And that goes to 2 dispersers and then directly to the bass group. So if I get rid of my effects here, it sounds like that. So as you can see, disperser brings up all the high frequencies and makes the lower super wet, and especially this Maximus 2, which is super intense compression here. So yeah, try Harmor, it's great. What do we have? We have this Reese bass here. Yeah. Yeah, so I think 42 minutes. I think that's okay because the next track has a lot of sound design, so we should probably move on to this one. Yeah. Okay, I'm taking a bit of time to answer the questions. Sammy, do you have any tips on mixing high-end? Compression in multiband helps a lot. So you would group all the basses, which have a lot of high frequencies. And if you compress it in a very hard way, if the high frequencies is lower than the threshold, it's going to be pushed up. But if it's higher, it's going to be brought down. That's what OTT does really. So it's a good way to do it, but it's also good to know how much to do it, because if you just throw OTT 100% every time, it's going to sound like OTT. Your EQ curve will be the OTT curve. It's going to be a smile type EQ, which is fine, but just you have to know it. So sometimes it's better to experiment with your own multiband compression. I recommend Maximus, Pro MB from FabFilter, Multiband Dynamics from Ableton. You can tweak it and change the ratio, change the crossover frequencies and stuff like that. Do you have any favorite key to work in? Yeah, I think D sharp minor from Kero is the right answer for me too. But lately D, if I'm honest. What's the biggest mixing mistake you hear often from demos? I think the stereo. I think most of the time the main thing that's not really understood is how to mix mono and how to have a nice stereo without phasing issues. And that's a hard question to answer, that's not easy. But the main thing you need to remember when it comes to that topic is to always have something in the mono, always have something in the center to play. If you forget the center, you probably don't have a center, right? You probably will have too much stereo content, made from chorus, reverb, dimension expander and delays. It's easy to create stereo, but it's hard to have a good balance. Another tip to mix in stereo is to use the free Ozone Imager 2. So you run it through your sound, and you try to have that one white thing dot go not below 0. If it goes below 0, it means you have more side frequencies than mono frequency, mid frequencies, or just content. If it goes above, it means you have more mid than side, and if it goes directly to +1, it means you are completely mono. So always remember that. And I could show you later on, maybe with an example. Should you make all your stereo sound mono compatible? Yes, especially in the drop. When it comes to main basses, that's true. When it comes to the vocals, the drums, and the sub and the basses. The background effect doesn't have to be mono compatible because you could lose it on a sound system, it'd be fine. But most of the time you want it mono compatible because it's going to be tracks that you want to play at festival and stuff like that. And sometimes the sound system at festival is mono. That's another reason why you should consider mono compatibility.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer in every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
Like making a wide layer and somewhat mono layer. Yeah, you could do that. Is it better to master one synth or be decent in multiple synths? I think master one synth is better, for sure, 100%. Because if you master one synth, you master more synths. You know what I mean? If you know how to work with one synth really well, you can probably apply that later on because you understood the way a synth work. What's the biggest mixing? Oh, I think I answered that. Have you played more mono systems than stereo? I don't know. Some systems are stereo, some are mono. I don't really know. As a DJ, you don't really know. Okay. So the other track is my Excision remix that came out like 10 days ago or something. Let's play from, here. To the base, let it burn the place. Fire to the base, let it burn your face. All right, so it's a lot more dubsteppy than the last track, I would say, like a lot more sound design and stuff, so that should be interesting. Answering 2 questions here. I saw one. just how, no, my bad. No, let's go over it. Okay. So, yeah, what is this track? What's happening here? First of all, the drums, maybe. Let me show you the drums quick, and then we'll move on to the basses. So again, very sharp, but boomy kick. Short at the same time. It's less than an eighth note here, so it's very short. Again, it's always better to be short because you don't need much more, really. It's gonna leave more space for the synths. The synths the snare, sorry, I referenced it from Rumble, from Space Laces, and Excision, sorry. So it's a lower resonance with two clappy layers, I would say. Compressed, reverb a lot. The reverb is also very, almost like harsh, which I did on purpose. Then we have the sub. Very standard sub, nothing crazy about that. And then the growls. Layered with the detuney type sound. And all of them gives me so it's a complete sound from sub to mid to higher frequencies based on the sounds I use. I think I chose the sound layers in order to have the bigger, like a fuller sound. So the sound were chosen to match the mix down this time, not the opposite. And finally, a background layer. Which is just like a E minor cluster notes. So you play the E first, then you play D sharp, then you play F, I think. And you keep bringing more notes like that. Anyway, so the third layer on the snare clap is from Fin Sample Pack. I don't know if it's out yet, but it sent me the other time. It's actually good on its own, like I could actually use that as a main sound, but it was lacking a bit of, I would say punch maybe. Let's see, alone. Huh. It's solid. A bit higher than I wanted, I think. So yeah. Anyway, so the growl is made from citrus. So I'm sorry for the serum guys out there, and probably like 99% of the people watching, but I made the growl in citrus, and I actually prepared the sound design here for you guys. So let's see, where is it? Okay, so it's that one here. As you can see, it's very intense on the CPU, so I might have to turn down some stuff here. So that's the sound, really. It's gonna be tough to, explain exactly step by step how to do that one, but Citrus works as it's the same as operator, if I'm correct. So it's FM synthesis. So you have 6 operators, and each of them can FM the others, right? Based on the grid here. So for instance here, number 2 FM number 1, number 3 FM's number 1, number 3 FM's number 2, number 4 FM's number 2, and 1 as well. Just a little bit every time, but enough to get me what I want, which is both the sub frequencies, the mid frequency, and the higher frequencies. But if I get rid of my effects chain, it sounds like that. So it's already very growly, So you have to really be careful about the sound, the waveform you use every time. So as you can see, 1 is here for the sub, the first one. This one more for like higher frequencies. I don't know if you see here, but I have some higher frequencies here. And this one is super harsh, so it's probably the one doing the growl, like the brrrr, you know. And after that, I have vocodex, just a little bit, like, you know, minus 20 dB on the wet. So not a lot, really. Disperser, again, not a lot. OTT, a gate, because the sound was crazy, the noise was crazy. EQ, homicide, just great multiband distortion plugin. Strongly recommend that one. So I'm distorting this band here from 150 to 650, and then the one band above 2K. So like lower, mid, and top frequencies. And if you want, I can just go step by step so we can be sure of what does what, you know. That one is Reverb, which is a reverb that's very much like a delay. It's in between a delay and a reverb. So each dot here is a delay. It's one delay in stereo, right, from left to right completely. You have an EQ, and the size of the band of the line, sorry, is the delay time, a pre-delay time if you want. And so depending on the room size, the tail time and stuff, you completely change the sound. Great reverb sound. Overdrive, okay. Maximus again doing the work here. So insane Maximus curve. And micro-shift to do a bit of stereo. Like 13% wet, so not a lot. And then finally MSCD to have more side. So I know it's might be, you know, maybe hard to reproduce, but I guess what you should remember from that is that FM layers like that, like 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 FM stacks really get you the sound you need for growls, in my opinion. And that's how they do the growl wavetable in Serum anyway. You know what I mean? So if you want to do your own, you can use Operator or Citrus. And then use pitch movement, and yeah. What else do we have here? Yeah, Citrus is FM8. You are correct, yeah. Here we have another type of sound, which is a sound I use more, you know, in most of my tracks. The laser type sound. This one I could actually show you from scratch if you are interested, guys. It's pretty easy for me now to do that one. Serum detune sound example. So that's another type of sound you might hear a lot in current dubstep. It's using detune and pitch movement in order to create the laser sound. So let's start with a quarter note. Okay. Hopefully it's not too boring. Sorry if it is, but I'm gonna be quick. Okay, so first thing you need to do is, again, random and phase on 0. Phase doesn't matter, but I'm just OCD, so yeah. Then volume on LFO here, volume curve, probably something like that. Boom, there we go. Trigger quarter, that's right. Then you want to do maybe +3 here. This type of curve on the pitch. FM from B. Random on 0, phase on 0. There we go. We already kind of see. And then after that, the great use of detune helps. Make sure you have like 3 range and, you know, 20 here in the width. You can also automate the detune amount if you want to be super precise and have a nice tone. So more here means more detune, so it's gonna go lower in pitch quicker, and less means less detune, so it's gonna stay higher for a longer time. I like to do, to start high. So you kind of quickly go lower in terms of the phasing here, and then kind of stop on that movement, on that tone. And then EQing, compression, and so on. Let's use the first one for that. Let's not waste too much stuff. Multiband. Chorus. Delay. Yeah, and then you can do any type of fucking sound from that. You can just change the detune amount, you can change the pitch curve, you can change the wavetable you use, but you get this type of detuney sound. That's always a good backup in any, dubstep track, really. So yeah, I mean, the sound I just did here wasn't probably the best when it comes to the sound itself, but you get the idea though. Let's see though if I put it to the same group 37 here. So yeah, we have disperser on top of that. Always a good help on the wet. If you don't have vocodex but you want to create a vocodex type sound, you can just use 3+ dispersers spread on the frequency spectrum, like maybe one around 200, one around 1K, one around maybe 3K, and automate all of the pitches together. Pinch, like you see this thing here, and the more pinch you have, the more resonance you will have, and it's a great starting point to create the vocodex sound. So yeah, nasty sound. You see, that's already a track. Okay. After that, what do we have? The growl, yeah, I talked about that. It's citrus. Even though I won't be able to reproduce from scratch, I'm sorry. It's gonna take too much time. And then what helped me here in that track was to cut each layer very sharp, make sure I have a bit of silence after every quarter note here. Even on the sub, you see my sub is quickly going down to 0 dB at the end, And that gives you more groove, more dynamic to work with. And then when the kick or snare hits just after it, it's like boom, you know, it's like more impact even. And that goes for all the layers, you know, it's, as you can see, it's cut every time, cut really sharp. I still have a bit of fade in, fade out, but it's not a lot. Oh, hey, Kyle, company here. What's up? Disperser were individual. Yeah, on one instrument. After that, the other sounds here, maybe. So the main thing now, because the flow was a bit like not softer, but slower, I felt like I could use this type of detune in the background. Just get a saw wave, 16 voices detuned quite heavily, and resample that, put like maybe a chorus on it, a delay, a reverb, resample that again and put it in your track. What else? So we have the same sort of yonk. Same, you know, same, just change the LFO rate. We have the main like brrr, which is Harmor, and I mean I could show you guys how to do that. I think it's here. So let's take a look at this one, for instance. It's okay. So again, it's not Serum, but I don't think I could have done the same texture with Serum. Maybe, but I don't know. Okay, so a lot of phaser, 100% on the mix here in Twins. Again, I use Harmor with a lot of phaser every time. Like I use the phaser to curve my waveform. Sorry, to basically the phaser is a good way to recreate any waveform based on the saw wave. So you have a saw wave and you phase heavily and it creates completely different wavetable every time. So see it as, you know, continuity of the wavetable here. And then the effects here applied are detune, distortion, compression, like a lot, you know. Without them, it's probably without that too, and without the phaser, you know. So that's really where it is, you know. Phaser, compression, distortion, and detune, and then find the right width, the right sweet spot on the phaser, the right sweet spot on the detune, the right sweet spot on distortion, compression, and you should already have a good sound. And then without the effect, that's how it sounds. So the first step is here. Again, vocodex, not a lot, no compression engaged. So it's what I call the soft vocodex, if you want. The only thing you have is just a little bit of layering on top of the sound with vocodex. So let me play you the sound from here. Okay. You see almost no difference, right? I could go higher here, but it's not really what I wanted. I wanted to have the sound still a bit harsh. Then convolver, very, very sharp, which means that the sample used in the convolver is short, which, you know, in fact doesn't create a lot of reverb, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted to use the convolver as a dimension expander, if you want. So that's why my spread here is crazy. Overdrive, homicide. Okay, we kind of see OTT, EQ, reverb, like that's actually more like a reverb. Limiter for some reason. And more EQing. Oh, the side thing. And then all the screeches went to that group here for some reason. which is even louder, more low mid, I guess. What do we have? More OTT, more reverb, and what is that? Oh my god, I don't know. See, that's the thing. I don't really know what what I did here. If I'm correct, I don't know. So it's just an EQ. Let's play without. Oh, that's doing a lot actually. So 10 dB on the side here, around 300. 5 dB on the mid, on top, which is not usual. Like you would do the opposite. Sometimes you would boost the mid on the lower frequency. So the mono is going to be louder on the lower frequency and the side are going to be louder on the higher frequencies. But I did the opposite here. So maybe that's why it's working more than expected. I don't know. And then a limiter. Going back to the sound here. And I think the sound really, you know, the layer here again, the detune layer, which is the same technique I showed you just before, just a longer LFO rate and a higher pitch, is what makes the sound really gritty, because the detuning sound creates a lot of tension and the tension makes the drop more interesting. That revert to it before. So here I reuse the sound from the first drop in a 8th note flow, which is 2 times faster. So I think I first did the sub flow, and then I used the detuning sound. And then I found this type of low mid like backup, which is just a Reese bass I cut from my previous samples. Really, I didn't make it, I think. With filter, creating a lot of whiteness in the lower mid and helping the sub. So again, if you high pass your Reese bass, it's perfectly fine, I think. Yeah, and then finally I used the original bass line that I put it twice faster, chopped it. Which is Excision and Woolly Evolution stems. Do you have anything on your drum bus? Let's see. Kick snare. So I have a limiter, which is set to plus 12 dB, so it's not doing anything. And I have a clipper at 50%. So the clipper is doing 50% clipping and 50% not clipping. So it's like parallel clipping, if you want. Why is it parallel like that? It's to be able to still have the mega transient go through in the master and being able to work with them if needed, you know? Because if I clip it, it's just going to be clipping. I can't do anything afterwards. But again, if it's not clipped at all, it might be way too loud. So it's a good way to do parallel clipping like that. On the kick and snare, I didn't use any specific stuff except from transient shaper on the clap. But you have to remember, it's already like processed, you know, it's already processed from other tracks. Yeah, so, and the kick was made in the same technique, 808, cut the 808 quicker, layer with acoustic type kick, maybe a hi-hat or two. And then on the group, you will have from that, you can EQ, compress, and transient, and resample, and you will get a sound similar to that. You can see it, transient, 808, cut. So if I focus just on the 808 part, it's very soft. If I focus just on the beginning, it's super harsh. And what's good about that is that the subby part of the sound, so the end, the release, has a fixed note. The note doesn't change much. It's not the kick where it does like, chew. It's just like, doo. Yeah, I know. It might be very simple for many people out there, but I think simplicity comes with experience too. I think it's normal to first go through the stages where you try everything and you got to decide. But then once you've tried a lot, I think you also learn to appreciate simplicity. And it's just easier. You focus on the track itself. And that's why I bounce everything to audio as well. This way I don't have to manage latency problems, sometimes automation issues. And it's also a good way to commit and make sure it's okay, my baseline is done, let's move on, layers and stuff. Please go over the drums. Well, I think that's pretty much it. Let's go over the drop 2 maybe. Okay. So again, the flow is different here. It's in between quarter note and eighth note. It's more like groovy flow. So for that flow, I thought using kick clap instead of snares would help. So I think that helped. Also, the sub on the snares is actually a growl. Which I think I still have exactly the same at the end, if you want to show. Sorry, if you want to see that. But it's mainly the same patch I did in Citrus, with my X knob here being quite low, which means all the FM amounts are way lower, like closer to 0. That patch going to all the compression, distortion stuff we did before, that's what creates the good sub frequencies too, as well as the stereo and a bit more distortion. So, I could focus just on kick snare and bass line, and I could already see the groove. One sec, I'm losing layers, top drums, So a lot of background actually on this drop. 2 layers, one being from F in sample pack, the sample called Tension Alarm, and one being the previous one used in drop 1 here. Yeah, and then the sound design is again the same lasery, detuney sound. What's interesting though is that this sound here, so the detuney sound, goes to the bass group, but also goes to this channel called Wet. This is a send channel, if you want, which is pitch shifted, so it's 5 semitones lower. So the reverb on that send channel is pitched down before, and that creates a pitched reverb. And I think it creates some, like, not melody, but... And you could pitch that up too. You know what I mean? And reuse stuff, like I reuse the stuff I did, this growl I used in my Achios collab. Like, yeah, what else? Yeah, so the wet, yeah, sorry guys, I'm doing a bit quick, maybe maybe not, but so the wet thing is very crucial for the, you know, what I call the laser sound designs. Okay, so let's say we have this bass line here. You know what, let's do a drop, you know what I mean? Like, let's do a quick drop here. And let's do it quick. Boom, 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 boom. Let's use the same sort of drums, kick snare. You know what? We don't even need that.
Make your music stand out, get more views, and way more engagement. Bring your music to life. Get Music Visualizer. In every format, even for social media. Get started today. The link is in the description.
That sidechain, give me the sidechain. And let's see what we could do. All right, so. Okay, so that's the sound we created at the beginning, or, you know, earlier on. Now let's do what I call the wet send, or the pitch wet send. So you would take your sound here. You would send it, I don't know, to channel 100 here. Workshop wet. Pitch down, okay, or pitch up. But I feel like pitch down might be solid here. So you have to use. I use kilohertz pitch shifter for that, and not frequency shifter, pitch shifter. Okay, now let's automate that send. So that's the volume sent to channel workshop wet right now. Now we need to reverb that, otherwise it's going to clash too much. So the reverb I use in order to make it more natural is a convolver, but you could use a standard reverb. One I recommend for Ableton users is a reverb called Bright Room. Reverb Bright Room. It's a short reverb. You know what? You start jumping like that. You start, like, you know, grooving to your track. Let's start automating stuff. You could also have one macro here doing the LFO rates together. So it's important to set it up the same way. So for example, bipolar 50, bipolar 50 again, boom, 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 boom. And again, bipolar 50. So that's very important to be exactly the same. Now we can automate both here. Okay. And we can start creating groove. for our track. For example, you start with a different sound design here. So that's my macro 1 doing the sound design change, and then macro 2 doing the sort of speed change. You could do, you could do a pitch change too. So with FL, it's great because you can just use master pitch. Make sure it's routed to 12 minus 12. Oops. And now you can start, playing with the pitch too. So it's pitched down before the reverb, in order to have that reverb, the sound coming through the reverb pitched, right? You could pitch up to, let's see. But you could do that with any sound, like any effect, if you wanna create a send separate for a delay and work with the delay itself. For instance, let's do 101 here, workshop send 2. You could create like a nice delay in 8th note. So that'd be, I believe, 1. I'm not sure. No dry. Something like that, for instance. And then you could frequency shift that one delay. So I know it might be technical, like I'm not sure if it's understandable what I'm saying right now, but and then you need to automate the volume sent to that one. So that's my send number 2 here. So that one is hectic, so I might need to Do you have any tips on making transitional 1-bar vibe changes for having duality in a song? Transitional 1-bar vibe changes, like an indicator of the mood is 100% changing from a yeah, it could be a vocal, could be a great drum fill coupled with a vocal and a great bass line shot, like an impressive shot, like a hook, like go in your best samples, your best presets, resample it, make it big and impactful, and make sure to have the focus on it, And now we could take our own, you know what I mean? Like we could take the growly here to create a call-in response. And that's how I work, to be honest. That's what I'm doing right now. It's what I would do if I were alone making a track. That's what I would do. I would, it's not very impressive, but there we go. And then finally, maybe like a couple layers in the background. Could be anything. Could be a atmosphere, detuning pads, vocal chops. Make sure they fit though. Make sure they fit the vibe. Here, maybe like a solid tension riser like that. And then you would copy paste and you know what I mean? Change that sound. So that's my new preset now. Clone that. So in Ableton, you would have to duplicate. It's going to create a new line. Change that. Maybe go 1 octave higher. Actually, it doesn't work. Maybe a fifth lower. And then, yeah, you could remember to use the macros you've set up at the beginning, otherwise it's pointless. But for example, you could create a cool 1/8 groove here using the macros. So the higher I go, the faster the LFO rate. And everything starts to build, you know, you have your reverb coming back, you have your layers always out there, you know, so it's a quick way to make tracks, you know. You don't think too much. Very instinctive, I guess. So yeah. Like, how do you know when to stop? That's a great question. How like when to stop? You could set up rules, maybe say, I'm stopping when I have my main sound plus 2 layers. You know what I mean? Like, that's maybe a great way if you don't know. You could stop when, also a good way to stop comes with a great sense of truly knowing your track and appreciating your track if you were just listening in a crowd, you know? So maybe take a step back as you go. Maybe every 10 minutes, like, just play it again from scratch, you know, try to listen to what you did and forget about the technical aspect of the track. Just take a step back, listen. Is it okay? Is it not? Might sound simple, but most of the time I never do it. So when I do it, it's usually helpful, and that tells me if I should stop or carry on. But I guess, yeah, you should know when you have like maybe 10 layers. Okay, like that's enough. You know what I mean? Any tips to how to keep your workflow going when you are making a little variation of a patch in Serum? Do you primarily? Yeah, I rely on macros automation to create my changes, you know? So I would set up 4 different macros, combine them all, so it's already like 4 times 4 variations, which is, how much is that? 16. And on each of these macros, you have also tiny changes, you know? You could set up a macro on the pitch, so it could go from 0 to 100, you know? So it gives you infinite possibilities of changes. And then you would clone that one patch and all of its effects in order to make new macros on the same patch and carry on until you have something great. And in my track here, I have everything is like I maybe have 2 or 3 starting sounds, like solid new fresh sounds, but then the rest is just copy of that one sound being changed. For example, I start with the one called Detune here, which is on my sample pack. Upcoming sample pack. You can see 4 different macros, pretty standard sound. You would copy paste that, change the macros, routing maybe, change the speed, change anything, you know, and it would give you like so many options, you know, so many options. Also, a great way to do it in FL, I don't know if it's possible in Ableton, but in Serum, it's always great to sort of chop your sound and go a bit out of time. So for instance, you could do, you know, instead of being exactly in 1/8, you could go here and sort of go outside a bit of the grid and see, you know, try and find flows. I'm pretty sure that's how Maroda does his crazy flows. So it doesn't work here, but you know, it doesn't really work here, but you have to try, I think. Give it a go. Yeah. Yeah, the macros, man, it's literally the only way I can finish tracks. And so yeah, that's how I did most of the track here, you know. You know, the sound can be dumb on their own, but when it's layered, sometimes it goes nuts, you know. So for instance, here you can actually see all the macros being used. So you know, that's one for the LFO rate here, one for the detune amount, and one for the tone. So it's the same sound, the same patch here, and each of these macros also have their own effects or changes. So for example, tone goes to these 5 different controls, you know, and so it's a lot of different movements. What else? Am I missing some? Maybe the intro. I didn't even talk about the intro. So I think what's important here is that I use the same sound I will use later on in the track, but in a subtle way. So this growl here was recorded to follow the melody, which does B, F, E, B, E, E, you know? Very filtered, like in the back. Sort of a night punk breakbeat flow. You know, and all of that goes, and also big brass, distorted brass doing the same notes. You know, it's always important to add a little bit of acoustic sound in your tracks. Why? Because there is no way you could sound design better than an instrument. You know what I mean? Like, you can try and make a brass in Serum, maybe use comms filter and delays and stuff, but it's never gonna sound like a brass. Okay, so I got a question from Volker Kyle again, which asks what about the first hit on every 4 bar or 8 bars, right? The first hit, in my opinion, needs to sort of showcase the track. If it's gonna be like a heavy hitting excision type track, maybe you wanna go for a big growl, like solid, simple growl. If it's gonna be more like a, you know, airy, like sound design E track, maybe go for a fake drop with a nice delay or something more like, you know, not that heavy but groovy, and showcase your track in that one bit, you know what I mean? So here the idea was to layer excision sound with my growl. With already like a big kick, so no fake drop really. I just went directly, like, and then every 4 bar. It's a good question because every 4 bar or 8 bars you need to show the new sound, and that's, you know, most of the time when I hear tracks, I don't hear that sort of solid hook at the beginning of each 8 bar or 4 bars. And it's important. You know, that, I don't know. Do you think vocals and vocal chops should be sidechain in dubstep? In drops, yes. In intro, no. Okay, so yeah, you know, but maybe what you should remember for that, if you love making dubstep, but maybe you are lost in the process of making dubstep, or you don't really know where to go, or you know what to do in your track really. Maybe you know everything, but at the same time you don't know what to do. As I said at the beginning of the session, take a step back, close FL or Ableton or anything, go on YouTube, like go back to listen stuff you used to listen back in the days before you even started producing. Try to enjoy the sound for what it is. And again, like go deeper and deeper in that, you know, listening sessions on your own. Take notes, you know, maybe like say, oh, I like this instrument because it creates that energy. I like this vibe because it's dark, and I like that vibe because it's reminds me of that thing. And as you go, you might connect dots between why you like dubstep and why you like that music, and it will merge into your own experience, your own sound, you as an artist, as opposed to you following other artists. Okay, so use presets but change them in order to make your sound happen. Use my workshop, but again, don't follow everything I said. If you don't like how I did my snare but still think you should follow, no, don't do it. You know what I mean? Don't even. Same for the bass. And it might sound very like teacher or, you know, like old school to say that, but the listening experience as I was talking is something that really helped me over the past year or so. So it's possibly the most important stuff to remember. So yeah. Maybe any other question? Learn so much. Thank you guys. I appreciate the feedback though. You know what I mean? It's really helpful, and I'm happy that it helps. I could answer like maybe a few more questions if you want. That was extremely amazing. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Alex. Appreciate that. How do you feel about combining genres? That's what I said, you know. It's necessary at this point. Everybody does dubstep so well that it's the only way you could stand out is to bring your background, culture, and growing what you used to listen when you were growing and at school and whatnot in your track. So I love soundtracks, for instance. So every time I try to add a little bit more of contact and actual acoustic sounds in my track. For example, here I would have, no, that's not right. Let me see, I forgot what is, yeah, in my build-up I would have always a strings or two. You know, strings here, brass, so yeah, I thank you guys. So all right, I think I'm gonna have to go on this one, but I appreciate the support, appreciate the feedback here, and I hope you guys have fun watching that, and you found some stuff interesting, and you can always go back and watch on the website, I believe. But yeah, over.